It is still funny because of the timing, and a frequent visitor, along with Jim Fowler, is...
Johnny Carson embodied late-night TV for decades, and he was the one who had America laughing nightly with charm, wit, and impeccable timing. But offstage affairs were not always so rosy, as there were some surprises that even shocked his producers, such as cringeworthy interviews, behind-the-scenes brawls, jokes that crossed the line, and episodes that were buried quietly. These are the 14 biggest surprises and cringe moments of The Tonight Show that producers prayed we would never remember. Johnny's childhood and career started on October 23, 1925, when John William Carson was born in Corning, Iowa, and he grew up to be the undisputed monarch of late night. His mother, Ruth Elizabeth Carson, was a homemaker, and his father, Homer Lloyd Kit Carson, was a power company manager, with the family moving several times before settling in the town that would play a role in Johnny's childhood, Norfolk, Nebraska, when he was 8 years old. Carson was captivated with shows after finding a book on magic when he was 12, and shortly thereafter bought a magician's kit and began performing tricks as the Great Carson, with his first paid gig at the Norfolk Rotary Club at age 14, after which he entertained crowds at church socials and his mother's bridge club. Carson served in the U.S. during World War II as a midshipman in the V-12 program at Columbia University and Millsaps College. And although he was not a combatant, he entertained troops aboard the USS Pennsylvania with a ventriloquist dummy named Eddie, which was the forerunner of his enduring ability to involve others. Following the war, Carson re-enrolled at Norfolk and studied at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, where he graduated in 1949 with a speech and drama major, a radio minor, and a senior thesis on writing comedy jokes, which he presented as taped skits and analysis that demonstrated his first authentic understanding of comedic structure. Carson started his on-air work at WOW Radio in Omaha, hosting a morning show with good-natured banter, then transferred to Los Angeles in 1951, where he became a KNXT announcer, reading station identification and weather forecasts. Although low-key, it paid dividends when he was given his own show, Carson's Cellar, with characters and sketches later revived on The Tonight Show. His initial major break occurred when he replaced comedian Red Skelton, impressing network executives and being awarded his own short variety show, The Johnny Carson Show. He then went on to host the game show Who Do You Trust?, where his rapid-fire wit and interaction with guests gained him unexpected popularity across the country. Carson succeeded Jack Paar as host of The Tonight Show in 1962 and served for 30 years. His rapid-fire wit, precise timing, and talent for getting the best out of guests revolutionizing late-night television. Carson established long-lasting characters such as Karnak the Magnificent and Aunt Blabby, and his monologues became a nightly routine for millions. He was a powerful figure who won 6 Emmy Awards, a Peabody Award, an induction into the Television Academy Hall of Fame in 1987, then the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1992 and a Kennedy Center Honor in 1993. Carson continued to be a figure of high regard even after he retired in 1992, and successors such as David Letterman and Conan O'Brien referred to him as the standard by which they judge themselves. Johnny Carson died on January 23, 2005, at the age of 79, leaving behind a legacy that transformed American television and comedy for generations. Johnny's life outside work showed that even as Carson's charisma illuminated living rooms across the country, his life was much more complex than his on-air presence indicated. He was married 4 times during his career, each union having its own highs and lows, marking his ascension, reign, and descent from stardom. His first union was with Joan Jody Merrill Walcott, whom he dated in college at the University of Nebraska. They wed in 1949 and had 3 children, Christopher, Corey, and Richard, but as Carson's own star was taking off, their marriage fell apart, devolving into one of drunk arguments and icy silences, and biographers report they divorced in 1963, the same year that Carson took up his iconic spot on The Tonight Show. Their son Richard died in a car accident in 1991, a loss Carson never openly discussed, but that weighed on him heavily by all accounts. His second wife, former model and TV personality Joan Copeland, married him in 1963 and encouraged him to work harder as Tonight Show host, but the glare of the spotlight was too intense to last, and they divorced in 1972, with Joan later describing Carson as emotionally distant, something others also agreed with. Later that year, he married model Joanna Holland, living in New York with her son until The Tonight Show's move to California strained their marriage. His long work hours and perfectionism left little time for family, and they divorced in 1985, with Joanna passing away in 2025. Carson's fourth and final marriage was to Alexis Moss in 1987, and unlike the others, theirs was a subdued, quiet affair. After retiring in 1992, Carson spent his later life sailing, reading, and living quietly with Alexis in Malibu, with producer George Schlatter remarking that the real love of Johnny's life was Alex. Despite his fame, Carson remained guarded, with longtime lawyer and confidant Henry Bushkin describing him as gracious, funny, and generous at times, but curt, aloof, and hard-hearted at others. Carson himself once cracked, "If I had contributed as much to marriage as I contributed to The Tonight Show, I'd probably have a hell of a marriage," a one-liner that summed up his self-knowledge and remorse. Behind all the fun was a man who couldn't connect, who poured himself into his work and hid his heart behind the curtain. His relationships were brilliant, strained, and a quiet quest for peace. Despite his marriages, Carson kept people at arm's length. He was charming in public, but at home was emotionally remote and eruptive, according to his friends. He was a man who could be surrounded by humans and still be utterly alone. And while Carson steered clear of politics on the air, off the air his opinions were keen and unfiltered. He once told critics that those complaining about his jokes in the living room were likely saying something worse there, a suggestion that he glimpsed behind the facade of virtue with which the public presented itself. Johnny Carson was a paradox rather than an actor. He introduced the world to laughter while keeping himself inside his bubble, remaining introverted. The genius behind the desk was complex, and this is what contributed to his tale being unforgettable. 14 most surprising moments. Johnny Carson is the late-night king of TV, but even his kingdom had those moments so taboo that producers fought not to get them out. They weren't bloopers, they were real and downright uncomfortable. And the following are 14 moments that shook the studio and almost went undigested by the public. 1. The Forbidden Episode. There exists one Tonight Show episode so thoroughly hidden that it is the stuff of late-night legend. Star Crate reports the unknown show appeared once, and then was gone. No repeats, no transcripts, no official listing, and no surviving evidence. NBC never officially acknowledged that it existed, which has only fueled generations of speculation among media scholars. Rumors swirled regarding what happened. Some describe a disastrous guest spot, perhaps a celebrity breakdown or racist rant, caused producers to pull the plug on the show, while others describe an offstage meltdown spilled over onto the live show, leaving Carson visibly shaken in a condition from which he could never get back. Used to his calm, Carson was said so far out of sorts that NBC executives rushed to cancel the episode entirely in fear of harming the network's reputation. What's so appalling about this period is the complete silence afterwards. While other cringeworthy or inflammatory moments were edited out or put on the back burner quietly, this show was literally forgotten. All the cover-up attempts only added to how enigmatic it became, and it ended up as a forgotten footnote in television history. The fans have been trying for years to learn what did occur on that evening, but no source within was ever privy to any hard facts. The Missing Johnny Carson show NBC attempted to hide is a segment that explores this eerie enigma, gathering theories and historical hints that suggest a moment so unstable even Carson's famous cool couldn't keep it from imploding. Scandal, sabotage, or something more intimate. Whatever it was, the truth is never known, leaving one of the spookiest and still unresolved pages of late-night history. 2. The Joan Rivers Meltdown. Johnny Carson and Joan Rivers were not only co-workers, they were a late-night power couple. Carson had long been an advocate for Rivers at the beginning of her career, famously informing her on the air in 1965, "You're going to be a star." She was a frequent guest over the years, and finally his regular guest host, stepping in whenever he was out of town. But in 1986, all of that changed when Rivers accepted a groundbreaking offer from the fledgling Fox network to host her own late-night program. becoming the first woman to have such a show, but she did not inform Carson until the deal was essentially on the table. Rivers went on to say that she was afraid the deal would not go through and did not wish to risk her position on The Tonight Show in advance. But when the news leaked out publicly before she had been able to sit down with Carson, she phoned him and he hung up on her. They never spoke again. Not only did Carson end all contact, but he put her off The Tonight Show for life. And even when she'd encounter him in public, he'd not say a word to her. Producers were amazed at how severe his reaction was, and the feud became one of the most notorious silent breakups in the history of television. Rivers did not reappear on The Tonight Show again until 2014, almost 5 decades after her first appearance in decades since the passing of Carson. Third, Wayne Newton's battle. Wayne Newton's feud with Johnny Carson was a war of egos, a battle that almost escalated to fists. Carson in the 1970s nightly mocked Newton's manliness, with Newton appearing seemingly effeminate or gay. Newton initially tried to roll with it, but the jokes refused to cease. They were retold every night and finally adopted by other comedians. It took Newton a year and a half of attempting to contact Carson in private before he marched into NBC's Burbank headquarters, caught Carson in a meeting with producer Fred Dordova, and requested a private moment. What transpired next became late-night lore. Newton informed Carson, "Cut out all these jokes on me, and they'll cut right out or I'll kick your ass." Carson, who was famous for having an icy personality, didn't apologize and never had Newton on again. Years afterwards, Newton referred to Carson as a mean-spirited human being and described the gags as deliberate cruelty that harmed his reputation. He even attributed Carson's influence for the propagation of malicious rumors pertaining to mob connections, which prompted a libel action against NBC. The public outcry was so severe that Newton's visits on The Tonight Show abruptly ceased, and the two never made up. 4. Charles Grodin's on-air challenge. On September 5, 1990, actor and satirist Charles Grodin was a guest on The Tonight Show and gave what became the most painful interview in late-night history. Grodin's dry, deadpan humor turned talk show appearances into a form of performance art and walked a thin line between annoyance and laughter, but this time he overstepped. Midway through the segment, Carson was baited by Grodin. "Do you even care about your guests?" It wasn't a wink or a leer that it was asked in, but as a challenge. Carson, shocked, gave a chilly staccato answer that left the studio in dumbfounded silence. There was tension in the air. Grodin did not blink. He kept probing at Carson's shiny surface and the show's pedestrian pace. What began as a strange little incident soon turned into an outright ego clash, and audience members didn't know if they should laugh or catch their breath. Carson, who made his living defusing embarrassment with suaveness, appeared visibly shaken. Splice Today states that producers actually thought about removing the segment from reruns in the future since they feared it spoiled The Tonight Show's well-crafted facade, but Carson permitted it on the air. Even today, viewers revisit the clip as a strange moment in which the king of late night was taken aback on his own territory, not by scandal, but by an unexpected caller who dared to question the existence of the show. It's half act, half reality, and all awkward. 5. Shelley Winters versus Oliver Reed. Shelley Winters created late-night history on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. In 1975, English actor Oliver Reed started making sexist, salacious comments, such as remarks regarding the appearance and roles of women, and Winters, renowned for having a sharp wit and zero tolerance for misogyny, was not about to stand for it. Halfway through the bit, she stood up, took her drink, and hurled it directly into Reed's face. The audience gasped in shock. Carson, normally a voice of reason, looked visibly upset as tension within the studio hit astronomical levels.